Well, hello, thank you. Hi there, thank you. I'm Erin Daniels. I'm Chief Experience Officer at Apollo Matrix. We are a web and mobile design and development agency in DC. And I lead the user experience and design and strategy for our clients. And my presentation here is put your UX to the test. So just want to start off with a question. How many of you are designers? Oh, that's great. Great. And how many of you use user testing during your design process? Okay, good, good. That's great. And how many of you use eye tracking as part of your user testing? A few, yeah, a handful. So that's great. So we will discuss eye tracking and how that is used in the design process. To start out, a question. What is better, to make a well-designed program or make it the way my users like? So in other words, it's is it better to make a well-designed program that's very usable, it's using all of your best practices in usability and standards? Or is it better to make your interface in such a way that is appealing to the user and the way that users like it, so that you get that great first impression and get people to want to use this app? So the usability-centered interface is not the same as a user-centered interface. So the well-designed interface is the one with all of the usability standards and all the best practices involved with making it usable. And the user-centered interface is the interface that is very much in tune with the emotional response of your user. So say like the look and feel, for example. It resonates with the audience. You know your audience, and that's what they're going to appeal to. So for example, an app that is designed for college students, you wouldn't approach that visual design the same way you would approach the visual design for, say, a business app. So that's where the user-centered approach lies. So how do we answer this? Usability-centered or user-centered? Yeah. No? Why choose? So I know. So usability and user-centered interface. So we need to think about both. You really don't need to decide one way or the other. I think that, so when you're designing, you want to make sure that you are tackling both usability needs, make sure you're following best practices, and make sure that people are easily able to perform the tasks that you have in your app. You also want to make sure that they're engaged as well. You want to have an app that people will want to use, you don't want to have an app for students that looks like a business app and they just really aren't that interested because they won't get the most out of it. So here's a nice breakdown. This is a great formula that was created by Cindy Chastain. She's creative director at RGA. She creates this formula for us. So here is the usability-centered, which encompasses the function and the performance and the ease of use. These are all very tangible areas of usability and just UX, from the functional, technical sort of standpoint. And then there's also the user-centered, Now this is focusing on the beauty and the emotion and the meaning. This is really your first impression, the way that you can engage your users to really make them want to work with this app, want to use it. These are intangible ideas. And together, they make an optimal user experience. So, we design for the user, and we recommend designing for the user. So we see that the ultimate success is achieved when users are truly engaged and can easily do what they want to do. So that's encompassing both usability-centered and user-centered design. So how do we do this? Well, we add the user to the design team. Now, all you designers out there, this may seem a little scary. So, this user has no design background, most likely. This user may, say things that we don't want them to say. They may not like our design, or maybe they find it unusable. So, it's like this wild card in your design process. But what I'm saying here is I recommend adding that user into the design process. Work with that person and listen to them. And when you can listen to them, you can create a great user experience that's going to be successful. Because if it's so beautiful and wonderful to just the designers, but users are not able to use it, it's not successful. So how do we do that? How do we add the user into our design team? This wild card of a person, like we don't know what's going to happen with them and what our design is going to end up like. So first, what we do, we study their real needs and discover what their behaviors are. And we do this through user interviews. You can find out a lot in user interviews, user research, and in user testing. Then you use rapid prototyping methods to see if you're on the right track. And there are several rapid prototyping methods out there, a lot of tools. I covered some of those in my last talk at ModevUX. These are like Flare Builder and Envision App and some of those. There are just several out there. There are cloud-based ones and desktop ones. And so you design and you test repeatedly. Ideally, this is done before development. Just from a sort of a cost perspective, it's one way to help, keep your development, your budget sort of on track. You can catch things early. You can catch things often. You can make changes easier to a Photoshop file than you can to an actual developed app. So I'm going to talk about user testing here. So there are several types of user testing. Here I'm going to talk about eye tracking. There are also feedback interviews that are also part of user testing. With these, you get quantitative and qualitative data analysis, and you get an insights analysis. So I'm going to talk about eye tracking. And how does eye tracking fit into this process? So you have your wireframes that are here at the bottom left of the screen. And you have your pixel perfect designs. What you can do is just string them together, create a prototype in one of the prototyping tools, and put it in front of the users and do some eye tracking and see what they do. See how the users respond. Are they finding the buttons they need to perform a task? Are they looking all around and not, figuring out where to find the input text box or something, or are they, not quite sure how to initiate an action. These are things that you discover with eye tracking, and you can quickly make modifications to your design and test those to make sure that you're on the right track. So this is a heat map, and I mean, the way I see it is it reminds me of like a radar map, like where you see the rain and the storms. So in the red central area is like where the storm is, hitting pretty hard, So this is basically, in an eye tracking heat map, this is basically where the user's gaze is intense. The most intense is this red area. And it sort of spans out into the yellow areas. That's a little less, so they may have looked at that a little less than they did on the red areas. And the green is just sort of, even less. So what are we seeing from this heat map? Well, we see that there's a lot of activity right around the login screen, because that's what the user needs to do. They need to log in. And then they're going to search. So there's a lot of activity on the search bar. And there's a little bit to the right, you see some of these green sort of faint clouds. These are the, just looking at the different topics.
So how did you get these kind of forward or
Right, it's through the eye tracking equipment. It comes in through there, and you can track it in a couple different ways, and we'll get into that more when we talk about the eye tracking technology. And there are also some, more remote ways of producing the heat map. One of the things, though, that I found with the heat map was it wasn't as telling of an actual task. So if I wanted to see, well, a user wants to perform a task. I want to see if they can find an article, for example. And the heat map doesn't tell us in real time where they're looking. It's sort of like a time lapse kind of thing where you see it over a period of time, and that's the sort of end result. But with the eye tracking, you can actually see it while they're performing the task. And I'll show you a video of this. Basically, this here is showing there's a red dot here right on that flower. That is the gaze of the eye tracker. So the user had looked, and they really looked at that flower. And you could tell they started at the top and they moved down. This is the Tobii eye tracker, and we're testing a tablet responsive site on an iPad. There are different ways of doing eye tracking. There's Tobii, which I'm going to talk about, and they're awesome. There are also some alternatives that are remote. This is UI, for example. This is a remote tester. They use the webcam to do the eye tracking. And what they do is they find users just all across the country who sign up, and they do the service for you. So you could, submit your task and have them do it. I'm going to play this for you. So this is great. This was a test that we were doing for McGraw-Hill on their Access Science website, responsive site. Basically, we were testing college students and getting their feedback on using the site, performing certain tasks. So she is basically going to log in, do a search, and find an article. Science. Log in.
Okay, so I'm gonna look up tsunamis. I'm looking for T-S-U-N-A-N. Okay. Different articles. Brings up different articles. Tsunami. Set of ocean waves caused by any large abrupt disturbance of the sea surface.
So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to see the students using the website for sure. Now there's also in-person eye tracking. So this is done at the research lab. This is done at Toby's lab, and it is done with Toby technology. I'm going to show you a video of this eye tracking. Oops. So here you're seeing the search and the login and the search. The red circles are growing as the gaze is there for a while. And then you can see the action, the lines, and then finding the article. Can I play that again? Went pretty fast. There's login, search, does the suggestion, and then finds the article. So what you're doing is you're really seeing a very close detail of where they're looking and how long they're looking at each area. So what did we learn through eye tracking? I mean, it was great. It was a great study. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot about the user interface design, but we also learned a whole lot about feature sets because we also did the interviews and everything as well. We got a lot of great feedback. What we learned here, we learned that it was important to have different views for the non-subscriber and the subscriber. And so what that means is people who have not signed up yet for Access Signs, they get this really large, beautiful rotator that's explaining, why Access Signs is great. There's so many wonderful contributors. You're learning the best. It's very marketing type focused. And on the right-hand side, we see the subscribers view. So the subscribers have already been sold. They're really excited about using the project or using the product in order to complete their research assignments, and so they have a much easier access to the search panel. We also created a better layout for the search results so that people could easily find different types of media, and they could easily filter through the media types and article types. And here we did some eye tracking on the iPad for a redesign for the tablet version of the U.S. Botanic Gardens website. And so on the left-hand side, you see the current website, which is, it's okay. I mean, there's a lot of information there. But the new tablet-friendly responsive design is showing very tablet-based specific actions with the icons at the top. That's that first dot on the top of the right-hand side that moves down and then looks at the flowers. So basically, this is promoting our main goal of user engagement for people who want to visit the gardens because they want to see the flowers. So we are engaging them in that way. So why not have a usability and a user-centered interface? Because great product design encompasses both. You have great usability and you have a great first impression that makes people want to use your product. Resources, Don Norman, Designing for the People, and Cindy Chastain, experience, themes, and element of story applied to design are great resources. So put your UX to the test. You can tweet your favorite UX redesign, hashtag bestUX, and tag us if you would, Apollo Matrix, and Aaron Artworks, that's me, and ModevUX, of course. And come visit us at our booth. We have Tobii technology at our booth set up to see eye tracking for yourself. It's really awesome. And we have some really great sort of mobile views of the eye tracking and how it can be used for mobile as well as for web. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes? Okay. So we work that into the design phase. So we come up with comps, our main sort of comp designs, and then we use the the prototyping tools like Envision app, those types of tools to create hotspots, and they string together the screens. And so it isn't a programmed piece, but it looks and feels like it, at least to get a basic concept across, to see very high-level design, to see like the button and what screen it opens, that sort of thing. So it's very limited as far as like you can't do many gestures and those types of things, but it's very helpful to just show the screen flow and what the interface would look like. Okay. Yes?
When working with enterprise clients, it's very easy for enterprise clients to understand the usability side of the design because you can provide them straight metrics for the tangibles.
Right.
How have you been able to try to show that it's just as important to provide the intangibles because there's no direct feedback or no quantifiable metric right off the bat? They can look at it and say, okay, we're getting return on our investment.
That's a very good question. And there is a way, and I typically look at it as when the length of time people are looking at a certain thing, and also the idea of whether they're looking at the whole site. If they're taking it all in, that's a really good thing. If they're all over the place, they look around but they really can't figure out what to do, then it gets a little intense, and maybe there's just some confusion there. And then the other thing is if there are certain areas they just avoid, for some reason or another, maybe it's an ad space or something like that, or just an area that doesn't, maybe it doesn't look very good. So you can tell those types of things and then make some assumptions. And if you had a lab test where you had the ability to talk to that user and see and get that sort of qualitative feedback, that's what would really be helpful. So get actual quotes from your users, and that typically works very well, especially if it's difficult to put a number on it, because it's an actual quote. People will respond to that when they hear it, the actual words that your user said when working with the app. Any other questions? Okay, time. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm at the Apollo Matrix booth. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had them later. Thank you.